The junction was a patchwork quilt of despair and opportunity stitched together by the greasy hands of destiny. Or, as Captain Ransom Harker liked to call it, the last stop before the arse end of oblivion. The dusty corridors of this interstellar truck stop were filled with the kind of characters who'd sell their grandmother for a handful of credits, assuming their grandmother wasn't already on the market. Harker was one of them, minus the grandmother. He strode through the crowds like he owned the place, not because he did, but because if you walked like you did, people were less likely to stab you. Harker had the look of a man who'd seen the inside of too many bars and the wrong side of too many deals. His face was a map of recently conquered territory, with scars marking the places where he'd lost, and occasionally won. His hair was the color of a burnt-out sun, and his eyes were sharper than the knives he'd hidden in his boots. "Ransom," said a voice as dry as the desert plains of Mars. It belonged to a figure lurking in the shadows of a dilapidated kiosk selling everything from energy bars to questionable moral advice. "Gorn," Harker replied, not breaking stride. Still selling hope in a chocolate wrapper, Gorn slid out of the shadows, a wiry creature with more hair than sense. "Hope's for the gullible. I'm selling guaranteed disappointment these days. It's what the market demands." Harker chuckled. "Ain't that the truth?" They exchanged nods, transaction complete, no words necessary. In a place like the Junction, understanding was often unspoken and paid for in favors or blood. As Harker moved deeper into the maze of corridors, a peculiar, almost fluorescent glow caught his eye. It was coming from a stall occupied by a being that looked like a jellyfish had collided with a disco ball in a tragic, yet somehow fabulous, accident. "You there, human," it called, waving what could generously be described as an arm. "I must speak with you about Earth's military strategies." Harker snorted. "Military strategies? You've got the wrong guy. My only strategy is to run faster than the next guy when things go south." The alien's colors shifted, a kaleidoscope of confusion. "Surely you jest. We have studied Earth's data records. We seek the one called Rambo and the tactics of your Hunger Games." "Oh, you poor bastard," Harker said, shaking his head. "That's not doctrine, that's fiction. You've been watching our movies." The alien's glow dimmed, like hope deflating in a universe that never gave a damn. "Fiction, but the strategies are formidable." Harker's grin was wolfish. "They're about as real as this station's health inspections." "Then you will not help us?" the alien asked, its eyes, if they were eyes, pleading. Harker leaned against a wall, arms crossed. "Depends." "What's in it for me?" The alien hesitated, then its luminescent form brightened. "Resources, information, protection from the Armada." "Protection from the Armada," Harker echoed, eyebrows raised. "Now you're speaking my language, but let's be clear, I'm not the hero type." "We do not require heroism, only your expertise in deception," the alien replied earnestly. Harker laughed, a sound as bitter as a Martian winter. "Deception's my middle name. Let's talk. But first, drinks are on you." They found a corner booth in a dive bar with a charmingly low reputation. Harker ordered something that tasted like engine coolant but promised a quicker buzz. "All right, Tentalites," Harker said, settling into the sticky seat. "Spill the cosmic beans." Why would the Armada give a damn about Earth's bedtime stories? The alien's glow pulsed thoughtfully. "The Armada fears unpredictability. Your species' capacity for creating improbable victories is unsettling." "Unsettling's one way to put it," Harker muttered, taking a swig. "Okay, so you lot want to outfox the Armada with our make-believe. Sounds bold." "Stupid but bold. Boldness is required," the alien said with what might have been a nod. "The Armada seeks to subjugate all. We seek freedom." Harker admired its conviction, even if it was about as realistic as a zero-G tanning salon. "And you think I can help because—" "Why exactly?" "You comprehend the essence of fiction," the alien replied. "And your nature is unconventional." "Unconventional, huh?" Harker mused. "That's a fancy way of saying I never learned to lie properly." "Precisely," the alien said, its glow shimmering with what Harker could only assume was approval. "All right, I'm in," Harker said, slamming his drink down. But when this goes sideways, and trust me, it will, I expect a front row seat to watch it all burn." The alien extended a limb which Harker shook with wary amusement. "To unlikely alliances," the alien said. "And to half-baked plans," Harker replied, raising his glass. The bar's ambience was the usual blend of stale air and latent hostility, and it felt like home. As the unlikely pair sealed their pact, Harker couldn't help but wonder how he'd explain this one to whatever passed for a conscience these days. "Just another day at the junction," he muttered to himself, as the alien filled him in on the details of their impending lunacy, its glow casting bizarre shadows that danced like ghosts of better decisions. The conversation turned serious as the alien outlined the Armada's might, the kind of power that could snuff out civilizations like blowing out birthday candles. Harker listened, intrigued by the absurdity of their plan. Use Earth's fiction to bamboozle a galactic menace. Why not? The galaxy hadn't made sense since the day he'd left Earth, and even then, things were iffy. "You're sure this Armada's that scared of a little unpredictability?" he asked, scratching at the stubble that was trying to claim his chin. "Terrified," the alien confirmed. "They cannot comprehend what they cannot calculate." "Doesn't sound like much of a life," Harker remarked. "All numbers, no guts." "Indeed," the alien agreed, its glow flickering like a faulty bulb. Harker took another swig, contemplating the vast emptiness of space and the madness of trying to fill it with meaning. It was either this or another round of regrettable decisions in the station's back alleys. "All right, Disco Squid," Harker said, slapping the table. "I'm in. Let's give these armchair tacticians a run for their unearned credits." The alien's glow intensified, casting an ethereal light over their corner of the bar. "We shall prepare," it declared. Harker watched as it floated away, leaving a trail of bioluminescent hope in its wake. Sometimes, he thought, you're dealt a bad hand and still manage to bluff your way to the pot. This was one of those times. With any luck, he wouldn't end up face down in a gutter. But if he did, at least it would make one hell of a story. And in this universe, storytelling was the closest thing anyone had to a legacy. As Harker exited the bar, he glanced back at the patrons, aliens and humans alike, each lost in their own tales of survival and ambition. He was just another face in the crowd, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was part of something bigger. "Here's to fiction," he mused as he disappeared into the warren of tunnels, ready to spin a yarn that might just change the galaxy, or at least get him a few free drinks. As he wound through the corridors, his mind already concocting the wild stories he'd need to weave, Harker couldn't help but chuckle. Somewhere, someone was probably taking bets on how fast he'd fuck this up, and they'd probably win. Harker leaned back in his chair, the screech of metal against metal almost as jarring as the video feed flickering on the crusty old console in front of him. The room was dimly lit, the hum of outdated tech providing a comforting white noise that barely masked the distant arguments and deals being hashed out elsewhere at the junction. He pressed a button with a resigned sigh, initiating a connection to Earth, a planet he hadn't thought about much since he'd left it more fucked than a cheap hooker on a busy night. The screen buzzed and crackled, an image gradually taking form through the static. Finally, the face of a harried communications officer appeared, her expression suggesting she was about to retire to a bottle or a firing squad at any minute. "Captain Harker, you old pirate," she greeted with a wry smile, though her eyes were lifeless as a tax audit. "What kind of trouble are you calling about today?" "Actually, I'm already in it," he replied. "Got myself tangled up with some aliens who think Rambo is a military manual. Any idea how the hell that happened?" Her eyebrow arched in surprise. "Oh, that. Yeah, turns out Earth's been broadcasting films into deep space for decades. Some genius thought it would spread culture. Apparently, it's been more like spreading syphilis." Harker laughed, the sound like gravel being ground underfoot. "So, that's why I've got a glow-in-the-dark jellyfish asking me for strategic advice based on Stallone's finest." "You're not the first to call about it," she said, rolling her eyes. "Apparently every backwater species with an antenna has been tuning in. Some think we're gods of war. Yeah, or gods of poor plot decisions, Harker muttered. So what's the plan? Just sit back and let them think we're all Schwarzenegger and Katniss. The officer shrugged, the kind of gesture that said, not my problem. Unless you want to come back and explain it to them. Otherwise, let them believe it. Maybe it'll keep them from knocking on our door. Fair enough, Harker agreed. But these squidheads are looking for more than autographs. They want Earth's help against the Armada, whatever that means. Well, if anyone can sell bullshit, it's you, Ransom, she replied. Gotta go, the Prime Minister's about to announce his resignation. Again, the screen blinked off, leaving Harker alone with the realization that Earth's accidental cultural invasion had turned into his personal headache. He eyed the bottle of questionable liquor on his desk, considering whether now was a good time to start drinking himself into oblivion, or if he should wait until the plan really started falling apart. Meanwhile, in the more luminescent parts of space, the alien envoy floated into a cavernous chamber, a room filled with their kind, each a swirling mass of light and color, like a bunch of sentient glow sticks at a rave. The alien's form dimmed respectfully as it approached its commanding figure, a particularly radiant being whose light pulsed with authority. Report, the commander demanded, its glow shifting impatiently. The envoy launched into an enthusiastic explanation, its bioluminescent patterns dancing in what could only be interpreted as excitement. The human is willing to assist us, it broadcasted with rapid flickers. He possesses the unconventional tactics and deceptive nature we require. The commander pulsed with a color that could have been skepticism or indigestion. And this Rambo, did you confirm his capabilities? Indeed, we observed humans referring to their warriors and strategists by such names in their transmissions. It is evident they possess great prowess. The commander considered this, luminosity flickering like a broken neon sign. If the Armada fears them as much as we suspect, this alliance could turn the tides. While the alien leaders convened to discuss their next steps, Harker was back at the junction, contemplating his next move. The place was as lively as ever, a bustling hive of scum and villainy that made the Mos Eisley Cantina look like a church picnic. He threaded his way through the crowd, heading towards the one place where everyone knew nobody cared, the Rusty Wrench, a bar so disreputable it made the rest of the station look like a model of civic virtue. Harker slid onto a stool next to a woman with more piercings than sense and ordered a drink. You ever think the universe is just one big joke, and we're the punchline? He asked no one in particular. She glanced at him sideways, smirking. Nah, I think we're more like the laugh track, and not a very good one. They shared a moment of understanding about the cosmic cruelty of it all before Harker felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to see Gorn, the wiry creature who'd earlier sold him disappointment like it was going out of fashion. Harker, Gorn hissed, his eyes darting about as if expecting an ambush. I hear you got mixed up with some high-stakes aliens. News travels fast, Harker replied, not bothering to deny it. What do you know? Only that it's the kind of mess that leaves you dead, broke, or an unfortunate combination of both, Gorn replied, his grin a little too sharp for comfort. Sounds like my kind of party, Harker said, taking a swig of his drink and grimacing as it burned its way down. You got any advice or just here to gloat? Gorn leaned closer, the smell of stale air and missed opportunities clinging to him. Just this, if you're aiming to bluff your way out of this, make sure your cards aren't all jokers. Harker chuckled. When you're playing with the universe's deck, every card's a joker. With that cryptic advice lingering in the air like the station's perpetual smell of sweat and despair, Gorn slithered back into the crowd. Harker watched him go, then turned back to his drink, mulling over the latest development in his life's improv comedy of errors. Back on the alien vessel, the commanders were deep in deliberation. Their confidence in the humans' mythical tactics was growing, each leader more convinced than the last that these Earth strategies could be the key to their freedom. They exchanged bioluminescent signals of agreement, each pulse an unspoken vow of faith in the chosen path. "We must secure the humans' cooperation at any cost," the commander declared. The envoy glowed brightly, a silent promise to fulfill this mission. As it prepared to depart, its colors signaled a message of hope, or perhaps blind optimism, in the face of an uncertain future. Meanwhile, Harker found himself back at his ship, a rust bucket that was the interstellar equivalent of a beat-up station wagon with one too many road trips under its belt. He leaned against the hull, contemplating the absurdity of his situation. Somewhere a galactic power was quaking in its boots over the idea of Earth's fictional warriors, and here he was, just a washed-up captain with a knack for bluffing and a talent for getting in over his head. "Well," he muttered to himself, "if they want to buy the bullshit, who am I to stop them?" As the stars twinkled indifferently outside the viewports, Harker set about planning his next moves. He had a galaxy to con and a reputation to uphold, even if that reputation was for being an expert in human idiocy. Packing a small duffel with essentials, money, weapons, and a flask of something that might be whiskey, Harker climbed aboard his ship. He settled into the cockpit, surrounded by blinking lights and the comforting hum of engines held together by duct tape and wishful thinking. He initiated the launch sequence, the ship shuddering to life with all the grace of a rhinoceros on roller skates. As he navigated out of the junction's gravity well, Harker considered his options for inciting chaos and maybe even bending the universe's twisted sense of humor to his advantage. "Next stop," he said to himself. "Let's see if we can't convince some aliens to take a page from Hollywood." After all, what's the worst that could happen? The onboard AI, a sardonic piece of tech he'd named Edgar, snorted through the speakers. "Famous last words, Captain. Shall I pre-prepare the eulogy?" Harker grinned, flipping switches and adjusting dials like a conductor of the galaxy's most dysfunctional orchestra. "Nah, Edgar," he replied. "I've got a feeling this one's gonna be a real blockbuster." The ship hit hyperspace, stars stretching into lines as they plunged into the vast nothingness, leaving behind the junction and its peculiar brand of opportunistic camaraderie. As they traveled, Harker couldn't help but feel a mix of anticipation and dread. It wasn't every day you got to play the hero, or the villain for that matter, in a story that had the potential to change a sector of the galaxy. Well, maybe not change it, but at least confuse the hell out of it. Reclining back in his seat, he let out a deep breath. "All right, let's go teach some aliens the fine art of bullshit." Edgar's monotone reply crackled through the cockpit. "I suspect you'll find them fast learners, Captain," Harker chuckled, a low rumble that resonated through the metal hull. "Fast or not, we'll make it work. After all, we're only saving the universe. One lie at a time." And just like that, they sped into the unknown, trailing the scent of cynicism and the sound of gallows humor in their wake. Because if the universe was going to be one big cosmic joke, Harker figured he'd damn well be the one telling the punchlines. Harker adjusted the ship's controls, the familiar whir and click providing a strangely comforting soundtrack to his thoughts. Edgar, the ship's AI, sat silent for once, probably contemplating the digital equivalent of existential dread. Harker leaned back in his chair, staring out at the streaking stars of hyperspace. The ship jolted slightly, as if reminding him that no journey through the cosmos was ever smooth. "Guess the autopilot's drunk again," Harker muttered. He stood and wandered into the guts of the ship, where Juno Vesper, the ship's engineer, was deeply engrossed in her latest tinkering project. Juno was elbow-deep in a mess of wires and circuits when Harker approached. Her hair was pulled back into a tight bun, more for practicality than style, and her overalls were smeared with enough grease to keep a small fleet flying. "Got a minute?" Harker asked, leaning against the doorway. "Not unless you've got a power converter hidden somewhere in that charming personality of yours," Juno replied, not looking up from the tangle of tech in her hands. Harker smirked. "No, but I do have a puzzle for you, the kind that could get us all killed if we don't solve it." "Ah, my favorite kind," Juno said, finally glancing up. "What's the trouble this time?" Harker folded his arms, his expression a cocktail of annoyance and reluctant humor. "Our squiddy friends seem to think Earth's action movies are actual history lessons. They're gearing up for some kind of galactic showdown based on what they've seen." Juno raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess. They're expecting Rambo to parachute in and start a one-man war." "You got it," Harker replied. "Problem is, they can't tell a popcorn flick from military doctrine. And if they're planning to use us as strategic consultants, well, I'd rather not be around when they figure out Bruce Willis isn't actually an indestructible demigod." Juno snorted. "So, what do you need from me?" "Besides a strong drink and a ticket to the closest black hole, think you can help identify which bits of cinematic nonsense they took seriously? Maybe we can use that to our advantage, or at least avoid getting blasted into oblivion." Juno considered for a moment, tapping a wrench against her chin. "I suppose I could rig up a data analyzer to scan their communications. See what references they are making." "Sounds like a plan," Harker said. "And by plan, I mean the kind of half-assed scheme that's likely to end in tears, but hey, it's all we've got." Juno flashed a lopsided smile and returned to her work, her mind already racing through possible solutions. "I'll get on it. Meanwhile, why don't you go practice your sales pitch to an alien audience?" "Rhetoric was never my strong suit," Harker admitted. "I always figured if I talked fast enough, folks would be too confused to say no." "Good strategy," Juno replied, focusing back on her task. "Just make sure they don't bring any heavy artillery to the negotiations." Leaving Juno to her tech wizardry, Harker returned to the cockpit, where Edgar had resumed its usual sardonic commentary. "Captain, might I suggest a course of action that doesn't involve outright lying to an entire alien race?" Harker settled back into his seat, glancing at the console with a wry grin. "Where's the fun in that, Edgar? If I wanted an honest day's work, I'd have stayed on Earth and opened a lemonade stand." "You mean a bar," Edgar corrected. "Same difference," Harker replied. "Only the hangovers are different." The ship buzzed softly as it continued through hyperspace, an unsettling lull before the inevitable storm. Time passed with the kind of eerie stillness that only deep space could provide, until Juno's voice crackled over the intercom. "Hey, Captain, got something for you." Harker left the bridge and found Juno in the tech bay, hunched over her makeshift data analyzer, a jumble of parts that looked more like a cat had vomited a toolbox than any kind of sophisticated machinery. Still, if anyone could make it work, it was her. "So what's the verdict?" Harker asked, peering over her shoulder. Juno pointed to a screen flashing with alien symbols interspersed with familiar Earth phrases. "Our squidhead friends here seem particularly enamored with two classics, Die Hard and Independence Day. They think Die Hard is a lesson in guerrilla warfare, and Independence Day is a documentary about Earth's defense strategies against space invasions." "Fantastic," Harker groaned. "We're going to war with one Bruce Willis and a bunch of aliens with a grudge." "At least they picked the fun ones," Juno offered, not quite smiling. "But seriously, if they go in expecting to blow up a mothership or crawl through air ducts, they are in for a rough time." Harker rubbed his temples, trying to massage away the impending migraine. "All right, let's see if we can redirect their attention. Maybe we can convince them the sound of music is actually a survival guide." "That'll be one hell of a sell," Juno said. "You think they'll buy it?" "Depends," Harker replied. "Do they know what singing is?" "Not a clue," Juno answered, shaking her head. "Then we might just have a chance," Harker concluded. As night fell, or what passed for night on a ship hurtling through the cosmos, they continued plotting their improbable scheme. The universe, vast and indifferent, rolled on as Harker and his crew prepared to confront it with nothing more than a flimsy plan, a rickety ship, and a sense of humor more twisted than a black hole's gravity. Days passed in a blur of preparation and muted tension. Juno worked tirelessly, tweaking the data analyzer and crafting a digital Trojan horse, designed to subtly rewrite the alien perceptions about Earth's supposed military prowess. Harker, meanwhile, fine-tuned his sales pitch, rehearsing in front of a mirror while Edgar offered scathing feedback. "Your sincerity level is critically low, Captain," Edgar remarked during one particularly uninspired performance. "Good," Harker replied, smirking at his reflection. "Means I'm right on target." Finally, the day arrived when they would meet the alien leaders. The ship emerged from hyperspace with a shudder, settling into orbit around a planet that looked like it had been designed by a committee with a collective hangover. The alien vessel loomed ahead, a colossal structure of gleaming curves and pulsating lights. Harker and Juno suited up, their gear patched and worn but reliable enough to get them through this encounter, or so they hoped. Edgar would remain on the ship, monitoring their progress and ready to intervene if things went south. "Remember," Harker said as they boarded the shuttle, "we're representing Earth here, so let's make sure we live up to the reputation of unpredictable lunatics." Juno chuckled, buckling herself in. "Don't worry, Captain. I'm sure we can manage that without even trying." The shuttle detached from the ship and glided towards the alien vessel, its engines humming with a low, ominous note. Harker's hands moved with steady precision over the controls, though his mind was a chaotic mess of potential outcomes, most of which involved them being vaporized. As they docked, the bay doors opened to reveal a welcoming committee of bioluminescent beings, their colors shifting in a display that might have been awe or suspicion, or a particularly intense form of indigestion. Harker and Juno stepped out, their footsteps echoing on the smooth metallic floor. The aliens regarded them with an unnerving mixture of curiosity and reverence, as if expecting the humans to start spouting wisdom or perhaps shoot laser beams from their eyes. "Greetings," Harker said, opting for a tone that balanced authority with a hint of reckless charm. "We're here to discuss our alliance and how we can help you in your upcoming endeavors." The lead alien stepped forward, its luminescent patterns forming an intricate dance of hues. "We are honored to receive your guidance. Your historical records have been most enlightening." "Ah, yes," Harker replied, trying not to wince. "About those records, there's been a bit of a misunderstanding. You see, we Earthlings have a penchant for storytelling, fictional storytelling." The alien's colors flickered, signaling confusion. "Fictional? Yeah, as in make-believe, pretend," Juno added helpfully. "You know, like when a kid wraps a towel around their neck and thinks they can fly. Not real, but fun to watch." The alien leader's glow shifted through a spectrum of doubt and realization. "We do not understand. Are you saying Bruce Willis is not an actual warrior of renown?" "Not exactly," Harker coughed, struggling to keep a straight face. "He's an actor playing a role. The things you've seen are stories, not historical accounts." The alien delegation buzzed with muted discussions, tendrils waving and colors flashing. Harker waited, unsure whether they were buying any of this or preparing to incinerate him where he stood. Finally, the lead alien turned back, its glow calmer now. "This is unexpected. We must reevaluate our understanding of your culture." "Please do," Juno said. "And while you're at it, consider that maybe not all humans are as clever as the ones in movies." "We will take this under advisement," the alien leader replied, its colors signaling a form of cautious acceptance. With the initial shock hopefully mitigated, Harker felt a sliver of hope. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep him talking, to keep him spinning tales and truths in equal measure, in the hopes that somewhere in the mix, they'd find a way to stop a war before it began. As the meeting continued, Harker realized that maybe, just maybe, the universe's cosmic joke wasn't entirely at their expense. If they played their cards right, they might just turn this farce into a victory, or at least survive long enough to laugh about it later. The universe had a way of laughing at your plans, and sometimes, just to spice things up, it decided to do so with a full alien armada poised to obliterate you. This was one of those days. Captain Ransom Harker scratched his chin, feeling the familiar texture of the scar that ran across his face like a poorly paved road. "So this is what we're up against," he muttered, staring at the holographic projection of the junction, where alien battleships swarmed like angry hornets around a nest. "Looks like they rolled out the welcome mat," Juno Vesper commented, her eyes glued to the same display. "And by mat, I mean enough firepower to turn Earth into a charcoal briquette." "Think positive," Harker replied, though his voice carried the optimism of a condemned man. "Maybe they're just here for the sightseeing. Or maybe they misinterpreted Independence Day as a how-to guide for planetary destruction," Juno shot back, her tone equal parts sarcasm and frustration. Harker cracked a dry smile. Wouldn't be the first time Hollywood special effects got someone in trouble. The problem was, Earth didn't have a Captain America or a Tony Stark. It had Captain Harker, a man with a ship that was more duct tape than metal, and an engineer who could turn a paperclip into a weapon of mass destruction given enough time. If the universe was counting on them for salvation, then it was really scraping the bottom of the barrel. "Edgar," Harker called, addressing the ship's AI, which always seemed on the verge of a mental breakdown. "What's our best-case scenario here?" "The best-case scenario," Edgar replied dryly, "is that this is all a big misunderstanding and they just want to swap cookie recipes. The worst case is more likely, a lot of noise followed by an uncomfortable silence." "Good to know you've got your pessimism circuits running at full capacity," Harker said. He turned to Juno. "We need a strategy that doesn't involve us getting vaporized." "Already working on it," Juno replied, tapping away at her console. "If these aliens are using our films as manuals, maybe we can use that against them." "Give them something else to focus on, like a distraction," Harker asked, raising an eyebrow. "Exactly," she nodded. "We could create a fake broadcast, something that looks like a real military operation but is actually just a diversion." Harker considered that, leaning back in his seat, "like a cosmic shell game. We just have to hope they pick the wrong shell, or keep them confused enough that they never guess right," Juno added. "We've got enough old Earth footage to make a convincing show. They think we've got endless resources. Let's prove them wrong by pretending we actually do." Harker nodded, an idea forming in his mind. It was half-baked and more than a little insane, but that was practically the ship's motto. "Let's do it." As Juno dove into the task of creating a digital decoy worthy of an Oscar nod, Harker turned his attention back to the viewscreen, watching as the Armada continued its ominous ballet of destruction. "Edgar, keep an eye on their movements," Harker instructed. "If they so much as twitch in our direction, I want to know." "Don't worry, Captain," Edgar replied with its usual sardonic tone. "I'll be monitoring them like a bored teenager watching paint dry." Time passed in the kind of tense silence that only the threat of imminent obliteration could provide. Juno worked her magic, fingers flying over the controls, while Harker paced the bridge like a caged lion, running through scenarios in his mind. Finally, Juno leaned back with a satisfied sigh. "All right, Captain. We've got a broadcast ready to go." "It's a little Apollo 13 with a dash of Top Gun for good measure." Harker grinned, a wicked glint in his eyes. "Perfect. Let's show these aliens just how unpredictable we can be." With a few keystrokes, Juno activated the broadcast. Across the void of space, the alien sensors would be picking up signals that painted a picture of Earth mobilizing its legendary forces, an armada of its own, led by humans supposedly as cunning and unyielding as their movie counterparts. In reality, it was smoke and mirrors, a grand illusion designed to buy them time. Harker watched the screen, waiting for a reaction, any sign that the aliens were taking the bait. He didn't have to wait long. The Armada seemed to hesitate, ships shifting position as if trying to figure out this new development. "They're buying it," Juno whispered, her voice tinged with disbelief. "They actually think we're ready for them." "Let's keep them thinking that," Harker said, his mind racing. If they could hold this bluff long enough, maybe they could negotiate a ceasefire, or at the very least, not get blown to smithereens. The communications console beeped with the insistent tone of an incoming message. Harker exchanged a look with Juno, then activated the feed. The alien leader's luminescent visage appeared, looking more perplexed than ever. "Your capabilities are impressive," the alien began, colors shifting like a disturbed oil slick. "We see now the depths of your strategic potential." "Well, you know," Harker replied, injecting a casual swagger into his voice, "we Earthlings never do things by halves. We propose an alternative to conflict," the alien continued. "Perhaps a collaboration would be mutually beneficial." Harker nodded thoughtfully, trying not to let his relief show. "Collaboration, huh? I think we might be able to come to an arrangement, but first we'll need to work out the details." The alien leader's colors flickered with what might have been agreement. "We shall discuss terms. However, understand that trust must be established." "Of course," Harker said, suppressing the urge to laugh at the irony. Trust in this business was about as rare as a peaceful day, and just as unlikely. The transmission ended, leaving Harker and Juno alone with their thoughts. The silence felt almost oppressive now, the ship a small bubble of calm in the eye of a storm. "Think we can pull this off?" Juno asked, her bravado slipping just a fraction. "If anyone can, it's us," Harker replied, though the confidence was mostly for her benefit. "Besides, if this goes south, at least we'll have the satisfaction of knowing we went out swinging. And lying through our teeth," Juno added with a small, crooked smile. "Exactly," Harker agreed. "No point in doing things half-assed when you can do them full-assed." There was still much to be done. They had to prepare for negotiations, figure out what they could offer these aliens in exchange for peace, or at least a truce long enough to regroup and rethink. The stakes were high, and failure wasn't an option. Not if they wanted a future that didn't involve becoming a footnote in an alien history book. As Harker considered their next moves, Edgar's voice broke the silence. "Captain, if I may suggest, perhaps we could compile a list of Earth's less violent cultural offerings, something to show we're not just war-crazed maniacs." "Like what?" Harker asked, curious despite himself. "Maybe the works of Shakespeare or some classical music," Edgar replied dryly. "Or even a copy of The Sound of Music," Harker chuckled, shaking his head. "You really think they'd be interested in our arts and culture?" "Who knows?" Edgar said. "It might confuse them enough to keep them from blowing us up." "You're not wrong," Harker admitted, a plan forming in his mind. If they could shift the aliens' perception even a little, it might be enough to secure peace. Or at least buy them some time to concoct another harebrained scheme. As Harker and his crew prepared for the next phase of their mission, the galaxy spun on, vast and indifferent. They were just one ship among countless stars, yet their actions could change the course of history, or end it entirely. But for now, they had a fighting chance, albeit one based on deception and a healthy dose of gallows humor. As far as Harker was concerned, that was as good a start as any. Captain Ransom Harker leaned against the console, his scarred face reflecting the grim resolve of a gambler on his last token. The video feed flickered with the message from the alien leader still ringing in his ears like an off-key opera. The aliens wanted immediate surrender, convinced that Earth's military prowess was simply the calm before the storm, the kind of storm that ends with a planet-sized crater where Earth used to be. "Well, shit," was all Harker could muster, a pithy summary of their current situation. He looked over at Juno Vesper, who was slumped over her console as if it held all the answers to the universe's cruel jokes. Spoiler alert, it did not. "Figures," Juno said, not looking up from her screen. "The one time we pull off a bluff, it turns out they think it's the prelude to World War III, Galactic Edition." "Can't blame them," Harker replied. "I mean, you did use Top Gun footage. They probably think Tom Cruise is about to drop in and handle their entire fleet with a smirk and a volleyball." Juno snorted, but it was more exasperation than amusement. "What's next, Captain? We can't exactly Netflix and chill our way out of this one." Harker rubbed a hand over his face, contemplating their dwindling options. "We need to keep this act going a bit longer, long enough to negotiate something that doesn't end with us all as stardust." Edgar's disembodied voice cut through the tension like a knife through butter. Might I suggest we look into Earth's more diplomatic representations, perhaps a Star Trek rerun or two? They might appreciate a more peaceful vision of humanity. Yeah, because nothing screams negotiate like pointing out we're so idealistic we'd hug a face hugger, Juno shot back. The ship's mood wasn't exactly buoyant. Between the threat of annihilation and the ship's own systems casually threatening to join the aliens' cause by self-destructing, morale was lower than a snake's belly in a wagon rut. Gorn, the wiry creature they'd picked up along the way, chose this moment to slink out of the shadows. "What's the word, O fearless leader?" Gorn asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Are we playing dead or just dead in the water?" "Neither, thanks," Harker said. "I'm thinking we just keep lying until someone buys it." Gorn tilted his head, his eyes narrowing. "Always a solid plan, Captain. Just make sure your pants don't catch fire in the process," Harker sighed. "Trust me, if anyone's pants are gonna catch fire, it's definitely yours. You seem flammable." Juno leaned back, staring at the ceiling like it might offer divine inspiration or at least a good excuse to nap. "If we're gonna make it through this, we need more than bluster. We're running out of resources, patience, and whatever passes for luck in this universe." She was right, of course. The ship was running low on fuel, food, and hope. If they didn't find a way to resupply or negotiate a truce, they'd be dead in the black. Harker needed a plan, and fast. "Edgar," Harker said, turning his attention to the AI. "Can you give me a rundown of what we've got left in terms of resources?" "Let's see," Edgar replied, his voice dripping with a kind of mechanical ennui. "We've got enough fuel for one more hyperspace jump, assuming we don't mind landing in the middle of a sun. Food supplies are down to protein paste and whatever's growing in that forgotten corner of the kitchen." "Ah, the forgotten corner," Juno mused. "Where dreams and mold go to die." "Charming," Harker said, pushing himself off the console. "All right, first things first. We need to stretch what little we have and hope the aliens are as gullible as they seem." Gorn slithered closer, a sly grin on his face. "Any chance of selling them some of Earth's finer cultural exports? Maybe a box set of Friends or The Office." "Those might be more dangerous than actual weapons," Juno said. "They might die of laughter or confusion, or start seeing us as some sort of interstellar pest," Harker added. "Ransom Harker, the man who brought laugh tracks to the stars." Gorn chuckled, a sound like gravel rolling downhill. "Well, Captain, if we're going down, might as well do it with style. Or at least with a good punchline." Harker couldn't argue with that. They needed to keep up appearances, maintain the illusion, and buy enough time to find a real solution. He just hoped the universe had a sense of humor, because right now they were betting their lives on it. "All right," Harker said, a new determination in his voice. "Let's get to work. Juno, keep our little broadcast running and make sure it looks like business as usual. Gorn, see what you can scrounge up from the less scrupulous corners of the galaxy. We need supplies, and fast." Gorn nodded, slipping back into the shadows with the ease of someone who knew how to hide from trouble, or seek it out. Harker glanced at Juno, her fingers already flying over the keys, crafting their next great deception. "Think it'll work?" she asked, not pausing in her task. "Honestly," Harker replied, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips, "I have no idea, but it's the best bad idea we've got." "Comforting," Juno muttered, her sarcasm barely hiding the tension beneath. "Here's hoping the universe hates us just a little less today." With that, Harker moved to the helm, staring out into the void. They were betting everything on smoke, mirrors, and the hope that the aliens were as confused as they seemed. It was a long shot, a shot in the dark, but it was theirs. Edgar's voice broke the silence again. "Captain, if you're looking for a silver lining, might I suggest looking elsewhere? This situation is about as shiny as a coal mine." "Thanks, Edgar," Harker replied dryly. "I'll keep that in mind." As the ship continued its journey through the stars, the weight of their predicament settled over them like a shroud. But for all the darkness, there was a sliver of light, a chance, however slim, that they might just pull it off. "Here's to audacity," Harker said, raising an imaginary glass. "And the hope that the universe appreciates a good bluff." Juno glanced over, a faint smile tugging at her lips. To audacity, she agreed, and to not getting blown up. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Edgar chimed in. One miracle at a time, please. As the ship powered on through the vast emptiness, Harker allowed himself a moment of reflection. They were outmatched, outgunned, and out of options. But they weren't out of the fight. Not yet. The universe might be vast and indifferent, but Harker and his crew were determined to make their mark in whatever way they could. Even if it was just a cosmic footnote, they'd make it a memorable one. Because at the end of the day, if you couldn't save the universe, you could at least annoy it one last time. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to tip the scales in their favor. Captain Ransom Harker stared at the console, the flickering holographic projection of the alien Armada reminding him of a particularly enthusiastic dentist's drill. It was one thing to fend off a cavity, another entirely to fend off planetary annihilation. Turning his attention to Juno Vesper, he found her still hunched over her station, tapping away like it owed her money. "Any luck finding us a miracle?" Harker asked, knowing full well that any miracle in this universe would likely come with a hefty price tag, probably in blood or sarcasm. Juno didn't even look up. "Depends. Does a 50-year-old alien soap opera count? Does it involve alien gods of war being pacified by the power of love and interpretive dance?" Harker replied. Juno paused, her fingers hesitating over the keys. "Actually, you might be onto something. I found this ancient alien text," she said, finally looking up. "It's kind of like one of Earth's classic comedies. Think of it as Much Ado About Nothing but with more tentacles." Harker frowned, not quite following. "You've lost me at tentacles." Juno leaned back, folding her arms with a smugness that suggested she'd just found the universe's greatest coupon. "This text parallels a lot of our Earth fiction, but it's been twisted into their history. It's a cultural goldmine. If we can leverage this, make them think we've been friends before, it might buy us time or even sway their perception." Harker raised an eyebrow. "So you're suggesting we convince them we're long-lost interstellar cousins who once traded philosophical insights and family recipes?" "Something like that," Juno said, grinning. "And if we dress it up just right, they might not realize it's all smoke and mirrors until it's too late." "Sounds like a plan with multiple ways to fail spectacularly," Harker said, but he was already nodding. "But it's a plan." Juno's grin widened. "I'll take spectacular failure over certain death any day." Edgar's voice crackled through the ship's speakers with its usual cheerless enthusiasm. "Captain, if I may interject, relying on cultural misunderstandings as our primary strategy seems roughly akin to betting our last credits on a one-eyed horse." "Noted," Harker replied. "But unless that horse is about to sprout wings and fly us out of here, it's all we've got." Gorn, having returned from whatever shadowy corner he'd slithered off to, chuckled. "I've always said, never underestimate the power of a good bluff, or a really bad one. They both work." Harker glanced over at the wiry creature. "You got anything besides shadowy insights and a dubious moral compass to contribute?" Gorn tapped a clawed finger against his chin, as if deep in thought. "Well, I know a guy who knows a guy who might be able to get us a few crates of something marginally edible." "Marginally edible sounds like a 5-star meal at this point," Juno said. "Get on it." As Gorn slithered off, Harker scanned the room. The tension was palpable, like the air before a storm. The kind you didn't want to be in the middle of, unless you had a death wish or a particularly self-destructive streak. "All right, let's see what we can cobble together from this alien text," Harker said. "If they're going to treat us like gods of war, maybe we can spin it into something that sounds more like benevolent overlords." Juno nodded, already pulling up the relevant data. "We'll need to make sure whatever we present lines up with their existing beliefs. A story out of sync with what they know will unravel faster than a cheap sweater." "Good point," Harker replied. "And while you're at it, see if you can work in a subplot about intergalactic peace and prosperity." "Peace, prosperity, and pasta recipes," Juno said, rolling her eyes. "Got it." Harker couldn't help but grin. It was all ridiculous, of course. Here they were on the brink of annihilation, hoping to save humanity with the galactic equivalent of a sitcom. "Edgar, can you work up a presentation?" Harker asked. Something flashy enough to hold their attention but vague enough to gloss over the details. "Certainly, Captain," Edgar replied, his voice as dry as a desert. "I'll use the finest smoke and mirrors digital effects available, which, coincidentally, have about as much substance as a politician's promise." "Perfect," Harker said. "We'll sell them on our benevolent past and hope they don't question the script too closely. Or the fact that we're making it up as we go," Juno added. There was a moment's silence as they all contemplated just how razor-thin the line they were walking was. Then Harker clapped his hands together, like a coach rallying a team of misfit athletes who were about to play the match of their lives. "All right, team, let's pull off the greatest con job the universe has ever seen," he said. "Or die trying." "Both seem equally likely," Juno muttered, already diving back into her work. The ship continued its journey through hyperspace, its beleaguered systems groaning with the effort. But Harker could feel a shift in the air, a subtle momentum that suggested they might just have a fighting chance. As they worked, piecing together the delicate tapestry of lies and half-truths that would become their lifeline, Harker found himself oddly optimistic. Maybe it was the adrenaline, or maybe it was the sheer audacity of their plan. Either way, he felt a flicker of hope in the darkness. The hours ticked by in a blur of activity, the crew focused on their various tasks. It was a small ship with few hands, but they were determined. And determination counted for something, even in a universe that seemed hell-bent on chewing them up and spitting them out. Finally, Juno sat back from her console, stretching her arms above her head with a satisfied groan. "All right, I think we're ready. The presentation's loaded up and ready to go." Harker nodded. "Good. Let's hope our audience is in a forgiving mood." Edgar's voice piped up, full of its usual sardonic cheer. "Captain, I've crafted an opening that's sure to dazzle, or at the very least confuse them into silence." "Confusion works," Harker said, standing up. "Let's hope it buys us enough time to figure out our next move." With the plan in place, they gathered around the console, the weight of their gamble settling over them like a shroud. It was a long shot, a desperate play, but it was the only card they had left. As the video feed connected, the alien leader's face materialized, his expression as inscrutable as ever. Harker took a deep breath, ready to sell their story with every ounce of charm and guile he could muster. "Esteemed leader," Harker began, his voice steady, "we come before you with a message from our shared past, a tale of unity and collaboration that echoes through the eons." Juno worked the console like a DJ at a particularly strange intergalactic party, triggering the visuals that Edgar had crafted. The projection shimmered to life, depicting scenes from the ancient alien text, interwoven with moments of Earth's own fiction. The alien leader watched, his eyes narrowing slightly as the presentation unfolded. Harker held his breath, willing their deception to hold, to bridge the gap between truth and fiction. As the final scene played out, a moment of tense silence stretched between them. Harker could feel his heart pounding in his chest, each beat a countdown to their fate. Finally, the alien leader spoke, his voice a low rumble. "This tale, it is familiar. We did not know your people carried such wisdom." Harker released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "We have much to learn from each other," he replied, seizing the opportunity. "Perhaps this moment will mark the beginning of a new chapter for both our peoples." The alien leader's expression softened just a fraction. "Perhaps we will consider your words." With that, the feed cut out, leaving Harker and his crew in stunned silence. It wasn't a victory, but it was something. A sliver of hope in the vast, indifferent universe. "Well," Juno said, breaking the silence. "That was either the best or worst performance of my life." Harker grinned, the tension finally easing. "Let's call it a draw and hope the critics are kind." Gorn reappeared, his grin as sly as ever. "Looks like you've managed to bluff your way out of certain doom yet again, Captain." "For now," Harker replied, though his smile was genuine. "But I'll take what I can get." As the ship continued on its course, the crew settled back into the rhythm of their work, buoyed by the small victory. They weren't out of the woods yet, not by a long shot, but they'd bought themselves time, and in the precarious dance of survival, time was everything. In the quiet that followed, Harker allowed himself a moment of reflection. They were still a single ship in a vast, uncaring universe, but they'd proven that sometimes, even the smallest voice could be heard. And maybe, just maybe, they'd find a way through after all. Captain Ransom Harker leaned over the console, his eyes scanning the alien Armada displayed in holographic glory. The sleeping giant of inevitable doom was arrayed neatly before him. It was kind of like staring at a fireworks show, but the kind that could incinerate you and everyone you'd ever met. "We've got to play this just right," he said, not entirely sure if he was talking to his crew or trying to convince himself. Juno Vesper, hunched over her station like a fortune teller over a particularly uncooperative crystal ball, smirked. "We've got all the right ingredients for a disaster. Now we just need to make sure it explodes in the right direction." "Right," Harker replied, rubbing his temples. "How do you sell a recipe for interstellar friendship when the main course is complete and utter bullshit?" "With style, Captain," Edgar chimed in through the speakers, his disembodied voice as chipper as ever. "And maybe a touch of desperation." Harker snorted. "We've got plenty of that to go around." From his spot in the shadows, Gorn chuckled, a sound like gravel rolling down a hill. "Desperation makes for a good seasoning. Just don't overdo it." Harker waved a dismissive hand. "Desperation is our house special. Now let's see if we can convince these aliens we're long-lost pen pals." Juno tapped through the alien text on her screen, her fingers moving like a pianist playing a haunting melody. "I've pulled the juiciest bits of their lore and mixed it with some of our greatest hits. If they buy this, we might just get them to open up diplomatic channels instead of their weapons vaults." "And if they don't buy it?" Harker asked. "Then we just pray they're fans of improv," Juno replied. The ship hummed around them, a metallic beast straining under the weight of its impossible mission. The autopilot, as unreliable as a politician's promise, occasionally jerked the vessel off course, as if reminding them that even their ship was skeptical of their chances. "All right," Harker said, straightening up. "Let's do this." "Edgar, are you ready for a little show and tell?" "Ready as a one-legged acrobat on a tightrope," Edgar quipped. "Just give the word, Captain." "Juno, you're in charge of the visuals. Make it look like we're the kind of historical allies you bring home to meet your parents," Harker instructed. "And Gorn, if you've got any more shadowy insights or dubious contacts that could help, now's the time." Gorn shrugged, his wiry frame shifting like smoke. "I've got a guy who once sold me a map of the stars that turned out to be an astrological chart, but that's about it." "Great," Harker said dryly. "Just what we need. Cosmic fortune cookies." "And what kind of fortune are we hoping for, Captain?" Juno asked, her tone teasing as she continued to refine the presentation. "A long and prosperous life, preferably," Harker replied. "Or at least one that extends past tomorrow." With everything as ready as it was going to get, Harker took a deep breath and signaled Edgar to open the comms. The flickering video feed sprang to life, and the alien leader's face took up the screen. He had the kind of expression that suggested he was already mentally composing their obituary. "Esteemed leader," Harker began, trying to project the kind of warmth and sincerity usually reserved for auctioneers and used car salesmen. "We wish to share a story from our shared past, a legend that unites our peoples in a tapestry of collaboration and mutual respect." Juno triggered the visuals, and the holographic projection sprang to life, playing out scenes from the ancient alien texts. They were interspersed with clips from Earth's cinematic masterpieces, carefully curated to mimic the alien narratives. If nothing else, it was an impressive light show. The alien leader watched, his expression unreadable, though his eyes narrowed just a fraction when a particularly dramatic scene from Rambo flashed on the screen, reimagined as a tale of strategic diplomacy rather than mindless violence. Harker swallowed, his mouth as dry as a desert. Our histories, our fictions, they've intertwined, forming a bridge between our cultures. Surely this is a sign that we were meant to be allies, not adversaries. The alien leader's gaze was a cold, calculated thing, as if he were weighing Harker against a cosmic scale of justice. These tales, they are familiar. Harker nodded, his heart pounding in his chest like an over-enthusiastic drummer. Exactly. We have so much to learn from each other. Perhaps this moment could mark the beginning of a new chapter, one of peace and prosperity. Edgar took the cue and added a flourish to the visuals, making the holographic figures hold hands in a symbolic gesture of unity. It was cheesy, sure, but sometimes cheese was all you had to work with. The alien leader's face betrayed no emotion, but the silence that followed was heavy, as if the universe itself held its breath. Finally he spoke, his voice a low rumble that seemed to resonate through the ship. "This tale carries wisdom," he said slowly. "We did not know your people possessed such knowledge." Harker released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, a wave of relief washing over him. "We are but humble travelers, eager to share and learn." The alien leader's eyes bored into him, searching for any sign of deceit. "We will consider your words. Perhaps this is a moment for contemplation, not conflict." The feed cut out, leaving Harker and his crew in a stunned silence. It wasn't a victory parade, but it wasn't the executioner's block either. It was something, a sliver of hope in a universe intent on swallowing them whole. "Well," Juno said, finally breaking the silence. "That was either an Oscar-worthy performance or a complete and utter train wreck. Or both," Harker replied, a grin tugging at his lips despite himself. "But I'll take it." Gorn reappeared from the shadows, his grin as sly as ever. "Looks like you've managed to bluff your way out of certain doom yet again, Captain." "For now," Harker said, though his smile was genuine. "But I'll take what I can get." The ship continued its course, the crew settling back into the rhythm of their work with a renewed sense of purpose. They weren't out of the cosmic woods yet, not by a long shot, but they'd bought themselves time, and in the precarious dance of survival, time was everything. In the quiet that followed, Harker allowed himself a moment of reflection. They were still just a single ship in a vast, uncaring universe, but they'd proven that sometimes even the smallest voice could be heard. And maybe, just maybe, they'd find a way through after all. "Captain," Juno said, pulling him from his thoughts. "What's our next move?" Harker leaned back, a decision forming in his mind. "We keep the dialogue open, keep feeding them those stories. Give them something to chew on that isn't us." Gorn nodded approvingly. "If history teaches anything, it's that people love stories, especially when they paint them in a good light." "Right," Harker agreed. "We'll give them the greatest interstellar bedtime story ever told, and hope they don't wake up cranky." Edgar's voice chimed in, dripping with its usual sardonic wit. "Captain, if you keep this up, you might just end up a hero." Harker chuckled softly. "Let's not go that far. I'm just another fool trying not to get us killed." With the ship moving steadily through hyperspace, the crew went about their tasks, a quiet determination setting in. They'd pulled off a minor miracle today, but there were still plenty of mountains to climb. And Harker knew that even the best stories had a way of ending in unexpected ways. But for now, they had a chance to turn a cosmic misunderstanding into something more, something that might just keep them alive. And in a universe that seemed hell-bent on proving otherwise, that was enough, for now. "All right, team," Harker said, glancing around at his crew. "Let's get to work. The galaxy won't save itself." Gorn gave a theatrical sigh. "Can't say I'm in love with the workload, but at least we've got a direction." Juno rolled her eyes but smiled despite herself. "Guess it's time to see if we can make some magic happen, or at least avoid blowing ourselves up." Harker nodded, feeling the weight of their mission settle on his shoulders once more. "Let's give them a show they won't forget." And with that, they returned to their work, the ship a small, stubborn light fighting against the darkness of the universe. Captain Ransom Harker stared at the blank screen where the alien leader's face had been moments before. It was as if the cosmos had decided to play a cosmic joke, and everyone was the punchline. He turned to his crew, a motley collection of humanity's least likely, most desperate saviors. "So," he said, breaking the silence with a voice that wavered between disbelief and relief. "We're not dead. That's a start." Gorn, his ever-cynical sidekick, leaned against the wall with his usual nonchalance, arms crossed like he'd been born with them that way. "A minor miracle," he grunted. "Or maybe just the universe hitting the snooze button on our doom. Or maybe," Juno Vesper chimed in from her console, "it's our stellar storytelling that saved the day. Who knew Rambo would ever be considered a bridge to peace? Yeah, next time, let's show them Die Hard and see if they praise us for our rich heritage of festive hostage negotiations," Harker quipped, rubbing a hand over his stubble. "Christmas miracle every time," Edgar's voice added, echoing through the ship's speakers with a hint of amusement. "But don't get too cozy. There's still a hell of a lot of unknown out there." Harker nodded, his mind already racing through their next steps. "We're in a tentative truce now. That's like balancing on a knife's edge while juggling flaming chainsaws. We mess up, and it's going to be a lot of mess. Now there's a motivational speech for the ages," Juno said with a roll of her eyes, but the corner of her mouth betrayed a smirk. The ship continued its steady hum through hyperspace, a gentle reminder that while they might be temporarily out of immediate danger, the universe was still vast, cold, and generally indifferent to their continued existence. "All right, crew," Harker said, taking a deep breath. "Let's talk about what this truce means. We got them to consider our stories as mutual history, that's something, but we need to solidify this into more than just a pause button on their guns." Gorn shifted slightly, his voice rough but thoughtful. "What are they after exactly? Trade? Technology? Or are they just curious about what other nonsense we've been broadcasting into space?" "All of the above, probably," Harker replied. "From what Juno's deciphered, different factions within their ranks want different things. Some are curious, some are scared, and some are just looking for an excuse to pull the trigger." "Sounds like a family reunion," Edgar quipped. "But in space." Juno tapped a few keys on her console, bringing up a series of holographic images. "I've been analyzing their transmissions, what little we can parse. They are intrigued by the idea of cultural exchange. Maybe they're tired of war, or maybe they just want new tales to tell their kids." Harker leaned back, considering. "If we can sell them on the idea that Earth is more useful as a trade partner than a target, we might get somewhere. Let's start small, offer them information, access to some of our less suicidal entertainment. And what, hope they don't notice that half of it involves blowing things up?" Gorn asked, one eyebrow raised. "Pretty much," Harker said. "We'll spin it as a cautionary tale." "Or a demonstration of our chaotic creativity," Juno snorted. "Creativity's one word for it. Look," Harker said, "these guys have been watching our broadcasts for decades. They think we're either gods of war or insane. Maybe we are, but we've got something they don't." "A sense of style," Edgar suggested. "Close," Harker replied. "Adaptability. And that's what we'll trade on." The ship's autopilot gave a slight shudder, a reminder that even their technology loved a dramatic moment. Harker ignored it, focusing on the task at hand. "Juno, keep refining the data streams. Show them how we adapt, how we learn, how we evolve. And try not to highlight our more self-destructive tendencies," Gorn added dryly. "Exactly," Harker said. "Let's focus on our more positive aspects, like, our capacity to eat junk food while watching our civilization's downfall," Edgar suggested helpfully. "Yeah, maybe not that," Harker replied, though he couldn't help but chuckle. "But you get the idea." Juno nodded, already lost in the data, her fingers dancing over her console. "I'll craft something that shows our resilience, our creativity. Maybe even throw in a few classic comedies for good measure." "Great," Harker said, feeling the stirrings of a plan come together. "Meanwhile, let's get in touch with Earth. They'll want to know how we're doing and what the aliens are after." Edgar's voice took on a wry tone. You think they'll actually believe us? Given our track record, they'd probably assume we've just found a new way to screw up. True, Harker admitted. But at least they'll know we're still kicking. Gorn pushed away from the wall, his expression thoughtful. If we play this right, maybe we can open up trade routes, share technology, learn from each other. Or at least stop trying to blow each other up, Juno said. That'd be a nice change of pace. We'll take it one step at a time, Harker said. First things first, we need to make sure the aliens see us as more than just potential targets. We need to be partners. Or at least entertaining enough not to kill, Edgar added cheerfully. The crew shared a laugh, the tension easing slightly. The universe was still a dangerous place, but maybe, just maybe, they'd found a way to carve out a corner of it for themselves. All right, folks, Harker said, clapping his hands together. Let's get to it. We've got a lot of work to do, and the galaxy isn't going to wait. Juno sighed dramatically, but there was a glint of determination in her eyes. Let's hope our storytelling skills are up to the task. Gorn gave a nod, his usual stoicism replaced with a hint of optimism. If anyone can pull it off, it's us. If nothing else, we're too stubborn to quit. Edgar's voice echoed again, a playful note in his words. And if all else fails, we can always challenge them to a dance-off. Harker grinned, feeling the weight of the universe lift, if only slightly. With our luck, they'd probably win. With their plan set, the crew returned to their stations, ready to face whatever came next. They were still a long way from safety, but they had a direction, a purpose. And in a universe filled with uncertainty, that was something worth holding on to. As Harker settled into his command chair, he allowed himself a moment of reflection. They'd faced death and come out the other side, not unscathed but alive. And that was a victory in its own right. The universe might be vast and cold, but here in this small ship, they'd found a bit of warmth, a bit of hope. And as long as they had that, they had a chance. Captain, Juno said, drawing his attention. Incoming message from Earth. They want an update. Harker nodded, a determined look in his eyes. Patch it through. Let's give them the good news. And maybe, just maybe, we can start building something new. And with that, the crew of the ship that shouldn't have survived set about their work, their spirits lifted by the possibility of a new beginning. The ship sailed on through the stars, a beacon of stubborn humanity in a universe that had yet to decide whether it loved or hated them. But for now, they were alive, they had a plan, and they had each other. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough.